Este es para dentro de 15 días. Vamos a tener otra planta nueva para control de los barcos.
This is a dad's army with deadly intent. In 1961, Fidel Castro smashed a CIA-trained invasion force of Cuban exiles in a debacle that became known as the Bay of Pigs. The survivors retreated to the Florida Everglades to form this group, Alpha 66. They've been fighting the Cold War ever since, launching what they call commando raids on Cuba. Almost within rifle range of the Everglades lies Miami, capital of the Cuban exile community. With more than 1 million Cubans here, Spanish is the lingua franca and the mood distinctly Latin. A glittering tribute to capitalism, paraded as an ideological triumph over the slow economic decay of communist Cuba. This vibrant, volatile community is united only through its opposition to Castro. It's a powerful exile group that seems to get its way with the U.S. government no matter what it does.
Uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco.
The lookouts are for dramatic effect. The police and FBI could hardly miss this camp, but they prefer to look the other way, as each Sunday Alpha 66 trains to launch acts of international terrorism from American soil. The old men with bitter memories have been replaced on raids by young zealots, not even born when Castro's revolution swept into Havana. The occasional arrest or weapon seizure rarely ends in a conviction. In Cuban-dominated southern Florida, no juror wants to be labeled as pro-Castro.
Let me tell you what the FBI tells us. We're like drive-by shooters. We go in the boats because we pick a target out and we try to burst fires into it.
35-year-old Jesus Hoyas is military commander of Alpha 66. He's led 3 raids on Cuba's beach resorts. The last that he'll admit to was 2 years ago. He's targeting the $1.5 billion a year tourism industry that is now Cuba's economic lifeline.
And what was the objective? You were trying to get rid of tourism? And can you just explain what were you trying to do?
Trying to get tourism to stop going in Cuba, trying to spend money, going there economy-wise, trying to stop that so we can liberate Cuba.
What would happen if you hit bystanders, civilians, tourists perhaps?
No, we didn't hit the tourists because we were aiming at the military outpost. It's close to the hotel, but we were aiming at them.
A week after we filmed this exercise, Havana's hotels were targeted in an anonymous bombing campaign. Castro claims it was the work of the Miami Cubans. While denying direct involvement, Alpha 66 openly advocates such methods.
The passive way have shown that it hasn't worked. It's been 38 years, it'll be another 50 years, and still there's nothing wrong. The only way to get Castro out is by the bullet, and he says that this is the only way he'll get out. There's only one party, and that's him, and that's it.
Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our
But other exiles have realized that bravado can achieve far more than bullets and bombs. These are the brothers to the rescue, the self-proclaimed soldiers of peace in the war against Castro. As volunteer pilots, they patrol the 90 miles of sea between Florida and Cuba, searching for refugees, or rafters as they call them, attempting to flee Cuba.
902, okay, so we're doing we should make sure it's only 12 for 902 and report the turnpike. Roger, 12, turnpike, 902.
To the exile community, they're heroes. To Castro, provocateurs, who repeatedly breach Cuban airspace. It was the brothers who triggered a dramatic shift in US policy when last year a Cuban MiG fighter shot down 2 of their Cessnas, just outside Cuban territory.
We're doing a regular mission when the Cuban jets came after us and attacked us and shot down 2 of our aircraft, and I managed to escape thanks to God because they were trying to shoot me down.
4 men died in the attack. Brothers founder Jose Basulto was piloting a 3rd Cessna which escaped. As a token punishment for invading Cuban airspace, the Americans cancelled his pilot's license. But the missions continued.
These rafters are my people, and I, like the U.S. government, are responsible partly for what happens here. I was involved in the Bay of Pigs in 1961. The failure of that Bay of Pigs caused all these rafters.
At the controls today is an Argentinian pilot, Guillermo. An ardent supporter of the exiles' cause, he outlines the 4-hour mission.
Okay, we're now heading on the 7955 parallel. We're going to cover Dog Rocks, Damas Cays, Anguilas Cays. You see Cuba's right over here, and we're going to be about 18 miles from the coast of Cuba. And that's international airspace controlled by the Cuban government.
And what's the likelihood of the Cubans sending aircraft out to ward you off or intercept you?
Well, there's always a possibility. They have sent them in the past. I think it's an act of intimidation towards us, but we're there saving lives, and we're doing what we think is right, helping others and trying to save them.
An hour south of Miami, the first hint that we're approaching Cuba.
Yeah, we just picked up the Cuban radio at this time.
But the festive air soon evaporates as we fly south towards the 24th parallel, into Cuba's declared no-go zone. Guillermo attempts to call Havana Air Traffic Control.
Buenos días, Copa 300, el noviembre 2506, estará cruzando el paralelo 24, 10 minutos, misión humanitaria, búsqueda y salvamento, respondiendo 1214, hermanos al rescate.
Two Cuban government aircraft respond instantly by jamming the radio. Somewhere out there is a Cuban airliner and the far more threatening presence of a Cuban fighter. For a few minutes, the possibility of a brief, one-sided confrontation becomes very real.
There was 2 airplanes. There was a Cuban Air Force airplane on the frequency, and there was a Cuban airplane. And what did I say to you? They didn't say anything. They were blocking the frequencies, so we couldn't relay to Havana Center or do the relay.
Thankfully, the Cuban Air Force keeps its distance as the 2 Cessnas enter the search area, a chain of bleak, uninhabited islands owned by the Bahamas and lying almost within sight of Cuba's coast.
All right, you see the group right there next to the rock? See, there's 6 of them.
Yeah, they are.
5 or 6, one on top of the boat. 120.35.
Not far away, another group desperately signaling for help. With nowhere to land, the brothers can do little more than drop drinking water and report their position to the U.S. Coast Guard. In a few hours, a Coast Guard cutter will pick them up. Because they didn't make it to the U.S. mainland, these rafters will be sent home. About 50 people attempt the crossing each week. Thousands are believed to have perished at sea.
Well, it's pretty well not all over for these people. 2152, thank you.
Unfortunately, it's a shame. It's all over, yes. But at least they're alive.
At the Miami headquarters of arguably the most powerful lobby group in U.S. politics, a canvas of the shootdown takes pride of place. This is the nerve center of the Cuban-American National Foundation, an organization that combines sophisticated lobbying with outlandish conspiracy theories to achieve its goal: the economic strangulation of Castro's Cuba. The downing of the brothers' Cessnas provided the political opportunity of the decade, forcing a wavering Clinton administration to get even tougher with Castro.
Yes, it had to happen in order for Clinton to understand the nature of the regime that he was confronting. And,
the foundation's president is yet another Bay of Pigs veteran, Francisco Hernandez.
So it's quite an impressive...
Funded by wealthy exiles, they've poured millions of dollars into both Republican and Democrat Party coffers, guaranteeing the undivided attention of every U.S. president since Ronald Reagan.
Here we are with my wife and myself with President Bush here in Miami during a reception. And here we got in the White House a photo with President Clinton the day that President Clinton signed the Helms-Burton bill.
The President of the United States.
The Helms-Burton bill, President Clinton's response to the downing of the brothers' aircraft, was the foundation's finest hour. Until this point, White House advisors had favored a thaw in relations with Cuba.
We will not tolerate attacks on United States citizens, and we will stand with those both inside and outside Cuba who are working for a peaceful transition to freedom and democracy.
Flanked by foundation heavyweights, President Clinton effectively signed away control of U.S. policy on Cuba, toughening the 35-year American blockade by threatening to punish other nations that traded with Castro. It's now permanent policy that can't be revoked by any president until Castro falls.
Our greatest victory, success, I would say, was to be able to wrestle away from the President of the United States the exclusive responsibility of setting the foreign policy of the United States toward Cuba. This is something that set us apart from any other group in the United States.
Such is the foundation's power in Miami that few dare to be openly critical. One exception is Francisco Aruca, travel agent turned radio commentator, regarded by the exile establishment as public enemy number one.
Our company's headquarters was bombed in 1989, and last year, 2 of our sales offices were firebombed.
After repeated attacks by extremists, his radio station was forced to move to a windowless bunker.
I need to take precautions, obviously. There's no doubt about it, and I live taking precautions. There are places in Miami that I would not go by myself. I say it very clearly. I would have to go with friends or bodyguards or something like that, because that would be an incident.
WOCN, Miami.
De cubanos del sur de la Florida, lo que ha impedido que la política cambie. Así que vamos
Francisco
a
Aruca's sin? To publicly advocate change in Cuba through dialogue, not confrontation. A position that places him at odds with the foundation.
What the Cuban-American National Foundation have gotten is that political and economic power and transferred it into national influence by participating in the electoral process, electing congressmen, voting against congressmen who are against their position. I would never say they practice terrorism directly, because I think it's not true. However, they have contributed to the strengthening, okay, even at a national level, of the mentality that has maintained Miami a single opinion town for many years.
Aruca also questions the motives of those local heroes, brothers to the rescue, claiming they deliberately provoked Castro just when it looked like Washington might ease the blockade.
These people kept going in their U.S. register planes into Cuba. Cuba had already warned, we're going to do something the next time, and they went ahead and did it. So I'm not justifying shooting down of unarmed airplanes, but it was definitely a provocation, and I think it was consciously done. Keep in mind that if we don't lack, if there is something we do not lack in Miami, is trained provocateurs. all right? We have been trained since the 1960s by masters in that field, and we're still paying the price.
And so the confrontation continues, with Washington swept along by the cause. This is TV Marti, established in 1989 by the U.S. government at the request of the foundation. Essentially, it's an anti-Castro propaganda service. Every morning, TV Marti's transmitter balloon rises 4,000 meters above the Florida Keys and begins transmitting to Cuba, at which point the Cubans promptly jam the signal.
It's totally wasted resources, I can assure you, because I go to Cuba often. Nobody sees TV Marti in Cuba. Nobody. I've tried to watch it at different times and different places just to say, hey, I saw something. And I never did.
This pointless daily exercise has already cost U.S. taxpayers $300 million. And President Clinton recently agreed to another request to shift the station's 200 staff from Washington to Miami, a move that will cost millions more.
It's just another way to cater to this powerful group. This Cuban-American National Foundation and this powerful group is the one that created this. They were the ones that supported the legislation and they got it passed.
As brothers to the rescue fly overhead, Cuban veterans gather on the banks of a Miami canal. Many Bay of Pigs survivors joined the U.S. military and went off to fight America's other wars. Others built vast business empires and bought influence in Washington. Influence that enables them to effectively dictate the Cuban policy of the most powerful nation on earth. But after 35 years of failed invasions, botched assassination attempts, and economic confrontation, Fidel Castro is still in power. They are, in the end, reduced to waiting for the old revolutionary to just fade away.
Thank you. Thank you very much for such a beautiful rendition.